It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
How do you protect your assets from inflation? Let's get out ahead of this. The first thing, guys, I mean, it wouldn't be a Money Guy show if we didn't talk about this because it really is all encompassing. You got to go to moneyguy.com/resources and just download our 9 steps to the financial order of operations. Because guess what, guys? The first thing you can do before you need to, don't even consider getting defensive if you can just build this into your offensive plan, meaning that you're going to build the concern for inflation right into your personal investment plan. And I think that understanding how your money works, where the next dollar goes, can actually help you out with that process.
Absolutely. So as part of building your plan and as part of thinking about the things you ought to be thinking about, we wanted to equip you with some things to keep an eye on, some things to be aware of that you can sort of use as an indicator in terms of where inflation is. Is it present? Is it something I need to be concerning myself with?
Now, Bo, show prep, you are so annoyed that Daniel chose a Bitcoin.
Yep. I think that we're going to share some of these, and I think that some of them I agree with, and I think some of them I disagree with.
So here's the thing. We chose to use the terminology indicator to be aware of and to be careful of. We did not necessarily say invest in.
That's exactly right.
So these are all data points that I think you can use. So I'm going to give Bo a little respect on that because we'll get to Bitcoin in a minute. But let's first talk about like commodities.
Yep, it's a great one.
Commodities is, by the way, commodities covers a lot of stuff. I mean, we're talking about energy, like traditionally oil and gas. We're talking about materials like metals. I talked about steel earlier. I talked about lumber. We talking about food. That's where you always hear the joke about pork bellies.
Yeah, sure. Your milk and bread.
I mean, there's all kind of things that fall into the commodity space. And look, this is a mixed bag in some ways, and it can be a mixed bag. But like I've already talked about, lumber, it looks like it's 3 times the cost. Gasoline, meaning oil, has bounced around a little bit as well. You always just need to be aware because it makes sense. Think about this from a common sense standpoint. Commodities are things that you're mining, pulling out of the ground, resources you're using. If there is inflation, they're going to probably be the canary in the coal mine to let you know, hey, there's something awry here when prices start spiking. So just pay attention to commodities. Precious metals.
Yep, that's another one. The one that you most often hear about, the one that we hear touted the most frequent is gold. Oh, okay, you want to use that as an indicator for inflation. As we were talking in pre-show prep, I do think gold is something to be aware of, but I am of the opinion that precious metals, specifically gold, is more of an indicator of fear of what's present in the marketplace.
I think the reason that people consider this something to be aware of for an inflation hedge is because there's a limited quantity available. Now, yes, they're pulling a few percent out of the ground by mining it every year, but the actual quantity of gold available is restricted. It's controlled, by how fast you can pull it out of the ground. So the fact that if there is inflation, it should reflect that because it's a precious metal. Now, look, there is other components of it and the fact that it does a fear gauge and other things like that. But it's something you can definitely watch. Pay attention to pricing of gold. It's not just gold. Also, it could be silver, which silver is even used in some of the manufacturing processes. But just pay attention to precious metals. Once again, I don't think it rises to the level that I consider this an investment, though. I don't personally own any gold. I don't personally.
Not an investment.
I guess I do own some gold in the fact that I inherited like some gold bullion,
jewelry,
but but I don't really consider myself a gold investor. And then the last one, this is the one that Bo and I actually came to fisticuffs in pre-show planning, was Bitcoin. I'll start off, Bo, in the fact that I'm having this whole evolution because I've had time to sit around, watch documentaries, study. Bitcoin, and specifically blockchain, is getting me excited about some stuff because, look, we hear every day where people are worried about free speech. They're worried about government control. They're worried about, rising tides of other governments in other parts of the world that are even more restrictive. And blockchain and Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies look like, just like the internet was a breath of fresh air for opening up information to everybody. There's a lot of people that are saying that these forces in the background that are threatening individual freedoms, the salvation of that will come from probably blockchain technology because it's incorruptible in a lot of ways. So people have attached that awesomeness to this is because it wasn't designed as kind of for the cryptocurrency to work in the financial space. And Bitcoin's been on a run, by the way. And I've even seen a lot of people I follow, because we know there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin. We're over 18 million. A lot of them were lost. There's a limited supply. And as the government's printing more and more money, you're like, this would be great as an inflation hedge. Now, I gave y'all a lot of love for all my crypto lovers. Now, let me tell you the only thing that keeps giving me pause. If you're going to take me on this journey to where we're going to turn cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, into where it's now legit, because we've got PayPal, we've got Tesla, we've got other big players who've stepped on the scene and said, hey, we're going to start dealing with some Bitcoin. The problem I have is that, remember, this thing is speculative in my eyes, because there's nothing driving the value other than you believing that somebody will pay more, because it doesn't generate income. It doesn't, there's no innovation. This thing is just a holder of value, but there's nothing. It's not like gold where you can actually hold it. It's tangible. This is definitely it's kind of a digital gold. But what does give me pause, and why I do not personally have this as an inflation hedge, is that with all those great things I said, I'm troubled by the fact that there's like thousands of cryptocurrencies,
of different cryptos,
of things that are supposedly holding value, that are going to be the alternative for currency. And then there's a lot of people that invent a new cryptocurrency. It does well. I'm not going to throw names out. It does well. The founder or the people behind it, when it reaches $1 billion of market value, they go cash in their chips. They pull all the money out for their family. And that makes me sound, that sounds more like a pyramid scheme than it does an overall holder of value. So that's the part I'm working on. But I do think that the limited supply, the government's printing money, there is something to that 21 million. And I do think there's something to the fact that Bitcoin is the biggest and boldest, but I don't know if I can say, I'm not willing to call this an investment yet.
So I can appreciate the academia around the limited supply would suggest that it could be a nice inflationary hedge. However, I am also of the opinion that you kind of need a track record to know how something behaves and what it does. What I like about using commodities or precious metals as an indicator is we've actually seen how those asset classes, how those individual items have behaved in both inflationary times and deflationary times, in different market environments and different contexts. In my mind, cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin are just so new. While theoretically they could serve as an inflation hedge, we've not actually seen them exist in an inflationary time period, so we don't know for sure. I'm still of the opinion that there are other factors at play that could affect the price or value of a cryptocurrency and what that cryptocurrency does that might lead you to believe it was inflation or deflation causing it, but is actually caused by something else. So I am not quite ready yet to hang my hat on Bitcoin being an indicator of inflation, because we've never actually seen Bitcoin during an inflationary environment.
Well, the value it's too flippity-floppity. I mean, this thing is so volatile that it's all over the place. And that's why, in my eyes, until things stabilize, and I mentioned this in pre-show planning, we have not had the culling moment in this industry. And the cryptocurrency industry as a whole has not had its culling moment, because you saw this with the internet too. And I'm old enough that I remember when that went through, and everything back then in the 90s also, if you just strapped .com to it, was worth $1 gazillion. We've seen that with like Kodak. Remember when they announced one day that they were going to have their own blockchain technology, and their stock price, even though they probably don't even have any patents that are carrying as much value as they were in their heyday, just because they used the word cryptocurrency or blockchain in their company, it shot up. That reminded me very much of the 90s. I do think that the thousands will be honed down and culled down to just a few, and it will be exciting. It will be something that we all should, that will add value to our lives. And if I'm a young person looking at careers, looking at things that I could pay attention to figure out if there's opportunities, definitely keep your eye on what's going on with blockchain. But with that said, it's not an investment yet. This thing is very speculative. It's too volatile. Just keep your eye on it. And I think that you got to be careful being first in on things. Yes, you might make $1 gazillion, but yes, you might lose a lot too.